Well then, well then, this is not a stream that was anywhere on my bingo card. If I were to have a Manchester United bingo card, Dan Ashworth has essentially been sacked, parted ways, mutual agreement, maybe visions didn't align, maybe conflict of personalities, conflict of ideas, inseparable differences, whatever it may be. I think a lot of us fans of Manchester United woke up this morning really not having this news on our agenda at all. Now, maybe there were the warning signs that something wasn't right, but no one could put their finger on it. Last night, after the game, Dan Ashworth had departed Old Trafford um, as discreetly as possible. Head down, not really engaging or looking out to media or press or anybody at all, just straight out of there, made a beeline out of Old Trafford. Meanwhile, everyone else stayed or departed in their own time. It was reported, so something felt a bit off in the air. But this is not what was this was not in the pipelines of expectation. Like I wasn't expecting to see that this morning we'd have sacked our director of football, which the optics of the decision is quite shambolic. Like Dan Ashworth was one of the first names on the docket of Ineos's um, intended rebuild of Manchester United. One of the first names that ever came up was getting Dan Ashworth in. Of course, at Newcastle would have made the deal difficult, and of course, with all the gardening leave and all the payoff stuff, and spent a lot of time ripping up a lot of trees and causing all sorts of issues um, for Newcastle United in the process, and of course, it was just a very very messy process. So I think people looked at that situation and thought, there are risks with that. There are options for director of football out there that we could go for that don't have this whole needing to put people onto gardening leave or pay tons of money or to other clubs or really upset the apple cart. So this decision, the timing of it, and just the overall optics really paints a very negative picture. Now, do we sit here and say, well, Ineos have their reasons, that Ineos have got something in mind or in accordance to what the Ineos plan was, that ends were not being met, loose ends were appearing, and business was not all as usual at Manchester United. We can look at the individualistic um, point of interest with Dan Ashworth and some of the decisions that allegedly were basically signed off or driven, instrumentalized um, by Dan Ashworth. And one of the outstanding issues that people had was, oh, why wasn't Ten Hag sacked in the summer? Why was Ten Hag not um, not let go in the summer? Why did they give him, a year extension? Why did they back him? Or why did they do these things? Why were these decisions touted in the summer? And people said Ineos wanted to give Dan Ashworth a chance. Well, supposedly, based off of reporting, if we are to believe what is being said in the media channels, in the different media streams, maybe Ineos wanted rid of Ten Hag. They wanted to get rid of him in the summer. They thought he's not really in the position right now that we need to, you know, keep going down the path that he's going down. We believe that there are other managers out there that we could bring in that would be more satiable to the job. Um, Omar Barada, I think, probably didn't have as much of a say on who that new manager would have been should Ineos have sacked um, Ten Hag after the FA Cup. Or maybe there was a pre-agreed plan in place. Should we go down this route, this is the name that we've opted to go with. But I can't lie, the outlook on why some of these decisions, or why this decision was made now, almost feels like Dan Ashworth was on like a probation period. Like uh, you've got a certain amount of time to work through before we really call it a day, or fully back you as such. So it's a bit weird considering Christopher Vival um, is probably the guy that felt more like his role was a probational role, that they would decide, yeah, we're going to keep you on permanently at a later date. Dan Ashworth looked like the more permanent appointment. But if there is truth to the matter that Dan Ashworth was instrumental in keeping Ten Hag and said we should keep this manager in place and continue to back him, the summer transfer window, the signings we saw, um, very instrumentally driven by Dan Ashworth. Um, and whether you could say, well, if that was his summer, he didn't have an awful lot of time to plan it, considering with gardening leave, you can't necessarily start pulling all the strings and signing off all the deals whilst not being paid or employed officially by the club. So, it does make you wonder. It does make you wonder if not for the Dan Ashworth appointment, what really was the plan for Ineos, and not just in terms of the backing of the manager, but talks of who, if Ashworth was told you can go and replace Ten Hag with another manager, who would you go for? Allegedly, also, Dan Ashworth was a major driving force behind trying to get Gareth Southgate into the club. Right now, whether that there's significant truth to that, whether there's that's just solely speculation, we don't know what the devil in the detail well and truly is. But let's indulge in the speculative aspect of it. It would be an absolute fallacy, an absolute travesty for Manchester United should they have signed Gareth Southgate as a Ten Hag replacement. Genuinely would have been a travesty. And if you're guys like Omar Barada, Jason Wilcox, Christopher Vivel, there's a sort of familiarity there a little bit. Like, those guys I can sort of see being on the same page, same wavelength. Dan Ashworth was quite distinctively different, right? A lot of internal experience in and around the English contingent of the Premier League and football, very pro-British, wanted to bring a lot of English representation or affiliate a lot of English representation, and has done so a lot of times in his career. People will look back now at his track record, look at the way that he's handled certain businesses um, at previous clubs. I mean, Brighton did a very good job there. Newcastle, I think, was a point where people really question mark the integrity of Ashworth being the director of football. We saw a falling out, I believe, between Ashworth and Eddie Howe. Um, Now, what those creative differences or what the dilemmas were there, we'd have to ask the Newcastle faithful what it was that was causing issues or causing a rift between manager and director of football, and what that would potentially have entailed for Manchester United. And I mean, the fact is that Dan Ashworth perhaps wasn't, in the eyes at least of Sir Jim Ratcliffe and Ineos, Dan Ashworth was not the guy that essentially they thought he was, because they looked at track record and thought, oh, well, his CV looks fairly decent, looks pretty good. It's quite homegrown, hefty, and, he knows the ins and outs in the English game, maybe not so much in the European side of things. And maybe Ineos or Omar Barada, because I think it was Omar Barada that essentially initiated the talks with Ashworth that went on, that inevitably led to the split. And supposedly Ineos officials then agreed with the principles of Omar Barada's decision, or what he wanted to do. So I'm sort of angled my focus here onto what it is that Omar Barada has got planned, because he sees something supposedly that nobody else here has seen yet, right? He's got a feeling that Ashworth was not the right person. He's not on the same wavelength, not on the same hymn sheet. Like, there's two different, driving forces pulling two different directions. And I think with Omar Barada being the CEO, if ever there's going to be the butting of heads between people in the hierarchy of Manchester United, Omar Barada is probably the most likeliest candidate that will come out on top in those sort of affairs. And we've seen it today. We've seen it today that Dan Ashworth is now gone after 5 months, and a summer transfer window where he's looked to backing Ten Hag. Ten Hag didn't work, it didn't work out at all. I decided, after I didn't see any incited change from Ten Hag, that he was not going to be the guy that we had to get rid of and change early. Ruven Nistelrooy coming in as interim was ultimately to pave the way, or sort of stopgap cover, getting the deal with Ruben Amorim done, and ultimately bringing in all of his coaching staff and starting something else with the coaching setup, right? Because beforehand, the managerial position, we had a manager and assistant managers and coaches that were sort of kept on from previous regimes, and we could say that there were perhaps conflicts of ideas and clashes of personalities in that aspect of things. This time around, Omar Barada, with the appointment of Ruben Amorim, was focusing on bringing the whole coaching setup, what worked really well for Sporting, implement it completely at Manchester United, in and around the playing squad. what we've seen from players and performances so far is that there are players that you can't coach them. They're not coachable. You can't manage these players. So what perhaps was the outlook between Ashworth, Barada, Wilcox, Ineos, Surgeon Ratcliffe, Dave Brailsford? What were their outlooks on the aspect of what it is Manchester United needed to do? Was it Ashworth wanted mass change, or was it Omar Barada that wants mass change? Was it Ashworth wanted to keep more things the same, or was it Ineos and Barada that said we want to keep things the same? Is it Ineos were trying to push cost cutting, as to say, well, we don't want to spend loads of money to do all of these things because we don't like spending money, whilst Ashworth maybe said, well, look at the situation, this is really bad. The fact is I don't necessarily think it was Ashworth potentially saying, guys, we need to rip everything up and start it all again, because this was instigated essentially by the CEO, Omar Barada, probably looking at what's happening, looking at the situation, who's here, who's not, looking at why we're in the situation, and probably said, well, we're in this situation because we as a contingent have made bad decisions, but look at the way in which those decisions have come around, right? Cause to effect. And let's be real, the idea that you've gotten rid of your director of football after 5 months, that is fucking ruthless. That is ridiculously ruthless. And, we could say maybe it's an unjust ruthlessness. But then again, look at it from this perspective. It's a ruthlessness that we need to see being dealt with the players, right? You can get rid of a manager that you spent a lot of time, effort, and money on, and you've paid more money to cancel his involvement at the club. The same ideologies should be applied to those players. And now it matters, right, what Ineos do from here on out. It matters what the plan from Omar Barada is. Because if we go down the cost cutting exercise route here and say, well, we don't want to spend money. We want to be the best recruitment. Well, we want to have the best recruitment in the world out of any club. But we don't want to spend money to do it. We want to save as much money as possible. So it makes me wonder, what is the long-term vision here? Now, there's already the reports to say Jason Wilcox will come in. He will step up as the director of football. I've got question marks about that. Christopher Vivell could take the mantle, but what happens to Vivell's position? Because they brought him in with the idea that he would be just that, filling that extra position. Or does everyone hold their positions, and that there is somebody that's recognised by Barada and people at Ineos, where they can go, well, we like this person because he aligns with our thinking, our methodology, right? Our methodical thinking, and is very cutthroat. One name I could probably think of would be Ralph Rangnick. So somebody that spoke about the open heart surgery needed at Manchester United, and maybe if for example, a hypothetical, if Rangnick were to be appointed as the director of football and was told by Omar Barada, right, I know how strong your feelings about this team are. Here is the power tools, right? You spoke about open heart surgery. Show us what you can do with open heart surgery. If that should be the appointment, I know for a fact that if we go down the rip everything up and open heart surgery, just change as much as possible because we're in crisis settings, we know that Ineos and Barada were more aligned with that than say Dan Ashworth was, because maybe Dan Ashworth was more sort of a bit more passive about or like massive change. It's reported, well, Surgeon Ratcliffe was not at all impressed with the summer strategy. What was that? Was it he was not impressed with the signings? Is it he's not impressed with how we paid? Was it he's not impressed with the targets? How the recruitment went? Was it he's unimpressed with some of the players that were not sold? Because if there's any relevance between Surgeon Ratcliffe's frustrations with Dan Ashworth's work so far being anything attributed to summer strategies with players that are still here, because Ratcliffe has had his feelings on some of these Man United players. I mean, he's already slandered this squad, slandered a lot of these players, right? He not directly, not name dropped, or not openly said, "Oh, our squad's bad," but he used terminology that you can very distinctively affiliate with. He's not impressed with the state of things at all. So, with that being said, is there the case that Dan Ashworth did not sell some certain players in the summer that he should have done, and it's just boiled to a head after watching the players that should have been sold still be here, earning so much money and putting in terrible performances? Did they just say, right, you could have fixed a lot of these issues in the summer, and you didn't. You bought some players in, some done well, some done not so well, but players you should have sold are still here. Are we seeing that frustration boiling to the surface? Are we seeing Omar Barada feeling that pressure and heat from Sergeant Ratcliffe and thinking, no, I can definitely see why he's annoyed with the situation. I can absolutely see why he's unhappy with the way in which things have gone this season. I mean, it's the worst Man United season, I think, so far, or points accumulation after 15 league games since I think it's the 1980s, like 1987, 1986, 1987, or it might be 1988 and 1989. But the situation is really, really dire, right? And the outlook is that there's a huge amount of work to do, and maybe the optics don't necessarily match up. Now, from a fan's perspective, I'm putting more faith in people that have come from backgrounds attributed to a team that have been ruthless, that have been dominant, that have been controlling a lot of things, than the outlooks of somebody who's come from developmental programs where you give patience and time. Ineos have already got the track record with Nice where they don't have patience for managers, where they will sack quite preemptively. So we know, like, managers and staff at this club with Ineos leadership, there is massive, massive risks that if things don't go in accordance to plan, we don't know what the lines of acceptability are here, right? And the fact is that players performing really poorly, we've already seen that somebody who's only been here for 5 months, who was tasked with changing things, has been gotten rid of already. Who else could face the sack? Who else could be booted to the curb? Like, no, like, this is a very, this is a major mission statement play to do here, right? Absolutely, in no way, shape, or form is anybody at this club below Sir Jim Ratcliffe safe. Nobody is. And I think the players, and this is the thing, Dan Ashworth, Ruben Amorim, I've spoken about Amorim and the support structure he has and the people he can speak to at board level. There are connections there. Well, today, the manager, the coaching staff, and the players have just had a big link severed. Just gone. Bye bye. See you later. Those players are going to would have walked in this morning, hearing what's happened and gone, what the fuck? Genuinely would have walked in and just like, oh my God, this situation is really volatile. What what's happened? How has this happened? Why has this happened? And ultimately, what we've seen is that people just got a whole lot more nervous, right? They've already done the mass exodus of staffing at the club to really reduce wage bills, right? And that's had a significant impact, right? We have significantly reduced the wage bills at the club. But even then, major key components in this club have just seen potential just destroyed, right? We're not going to ever see what Dan Ashworth as director of football would look like across a 3 to 5 year span. There's obviously something that they've looked at and thought, no, this is not going to go the right way, and they've acted upon it because just solely from the basis of who's initiated it. And I think Dan Ashworth, rather than being, really sort of like treacherous about it, they've had the sit down conversations and probably have gauged what his feelings on the situation are, gauged what his proposed fixes to the situation are, and then from that information have divulged that, right, so our vision is different, our beliefs are different, this won't work. Would you agree that it's better for all parties to part ways? And supposedly by way of mutual agreement, Dan Ashworth has gone, but if my vision isn't going to be trusted or enacted here, then I'll shake on it and I'll leave, I'll go. So ultimately, it's a case that we just have to accept what's happened, and we do have to be patient with what the plan from Ineos' side of things are. They've conducted or are still in the process of conducting an emergency meeting at Carrington with all of the higher ups. So obviously, this is the discussion that they're going to decide what the plan of action is. Do we recruit internally? Do we look for external influence, or somebody to come in? What is going to be the plan here? Because Sir Jim Ratcliffe also has rebutted the claim that Manchester United, he wants to have some of, if not the best recruitment in the world. So from those statements, I mean, coining the statements together, sticking them all in the piggy bank, and collectively drawing a conclusion from what he says, we can draw what we should expect from the actions of these people. Like, who people will speculate who they want to come in. There are numerous people out there, right, that Manchester United could realistically go after. Um, it's just a matter of who. It just depends on what the plan is, and I'm sure we will see what the plan is. We will see the direction that it goes in, and I think we'll have to make up our minds as to whether we're happy with the direction it goes. So, but yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Waggle Mr. Hot Fuzz. It's Donna Cullen. She's back. I'm here before anyone. I know it's a quiet afternoon. I think everybody's busy with family probably. I'm home alone as well. I probably shouldn't say that to you, but still. Are you angry with me? No, I'm not angry with. I'm not angry with anyone. I'm a bit shell shocked today with the news that's come out, but not angry with anybody. Um, Not angry after last night anymore. I mean, I was pissed off with the players, but do you know what? The proceedings of today have just given us something completely different to feast on. That it's just not. It's not what anyone expected at all. So we're just gonna try and pick up the pieces and try and figure out, right, okay, so this is a side or a play by Ineos that they've made here that we weren't expecting. No one was expecting this, so we'll have to see what the devil in the detail is going to be with the Ineos project. But guys, once again, let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section down below. Make sure you smash a like and subscribe and all of that good stuff. And we'll be back tomorrow, or not tomorrow, today. It's today, 8 o'clock tonight, the Sunday night takeaway show. So do be sure to come join us for that. And if you missed it, just in case you missed it, on the community tabs of the channel, you can find a show that we did last night where we basically just discussed all things football. Big panel, Sunday night takeaway-esque show with the final whistle hosted on Yeti's channel. So do be sure to go check that out. And also, not to mention, congratulate Yeti on his 300 subscribers landmark achievement. And yeah, back tonight, 8 o'clock with the Sunday night takeaway show, and we'll digest this a little bit more. Maybe some news that breaks between now and then in the Manchester United sphere as to perhaps the next steps on the director of football aspect. Supposedly just intercepted information from the Source United scout. Don't think that's legitimate at all, but supposedly Dan Ashworth wanted Gareth Southgate or Eddie Howe to replace Eric Ten Hag, which I don't necessarily believe that because they had a falling out. Dan Ashworth and Eddie Howe at Newcastle supposedly, so wouldn't make much sense to me. Really wouldn't make that much sense to me. Nonetheless, let's see what goes on. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys. Take care, and we'll be back if any more crazy breaking news comes up. I'm sure we will address it as it comes in. So yes, keep your eyes peeled, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll see you later on tonight. Take care and enjoy your Sunday afternoons, whether it's whatever it is you're doing, and if you're having Sunday roasts, think about me. Think about me when you're chowing down on that roast beef or roast pork or roast chicken. See ya.